Serge, you were involved with a car that was the love of my life, GTO 3987.
Your love and my love.
Excellent. How did you first become involved with GTO 3987?
Because it was part of the Ralph Lauren car collection. This is one of the cars that was in Montauk the time I was working for Ralph Lauren.
And what was your initial impression of the car when you first came upon it?
Well, the impression, first of all, a GTO is a GTO. You're always very impressed. You feel very fortunate to sit in a GTO. But as a whole, the car needed all refurbishing because I could see a lot of body details and paint has to be done. But mechanically, it was all right when I drove it. There's a few things that to be replaced anyway.
How soon after you met the car did you drive it?
Well, as usual, in the morning, my job was to get the cars ready, so do all the necessary checkings, fluids, levers, and what have you. And I did a minor tuning on the carburetors, make sure that they were up. And the ignition was fine. The engine took the RPMs well. I waited for the engine to be nice and warm, and I drove it around the village in Montauk.
How did you drive it?
Well, I drove like you should drive a GTO, you know. Wait until the engine is warm and take the RPMs. Take it through the RPMs, first gear, second gear, whatever, you know, that's what it is. Drive it, you can enjoy it.
I always liked the shifting mechanism on the GTO. I thought it was very well engineered and it was a smooth shifting car. By the time it came into your custody, many years had passed since I had driven the car, and one never knows how they've been treated or maintained, and I'm wondering, how was the transmission when you were driving it?
Well, the transmission shifted fine. I have no problem whatsoever, and also the main thing, that second gear always grinds if the previous owners did not drive them right. This wasn't the case, because the second gear shifted perfectly without grinding. So that meant whoever owned it before drove it well.
Good. You did mention that the steering was loose and that you rebuilt the steering box.
Well, I found a looseness in the steering box, because if you stand still, you could turn over a quarter of a turn of the steering before the wheels move. So I felt that it definitely needed to look after, so I did. I came back to the garages, took the steering box apart, and I ordered the parts right away from a source that I knew, and I got the gear and the bearings, and I rebuilt the box completely, reinstalled in the car, and that was the end of the problem, and the car really stood very, very well.
Beyond the steering box and just generally maybe the cosmetics, what was the major work to be done on that car when it came to you?
Well, that body should have been done over, because I felt like the roof line was not precisely the way the GTOs should be. I've been around a few of them, and I could see that this car needed some work, definitely, plus it painted also. The paint wasn't really what it's supposed to be.
All right. At one point in the car's life, after I owned it, Stuart Baumgard had an LM engine installed in the car. An LM that had been in Los Angeles, had been in a very minor traffic accident, but someone put out a road flare and the car burned up, but parts of the car were salvaged. And that engine was installed into GTO 3987. Was it still in the car when it came to you, or had the GTO engine been replaced?
I did not know, but I could not find the right engine number at the time. I was looking for an engine number. I didn't see the engine number that should have coincided with the serial number of the car. That's the rule usually on those cars. So I didn't look any further, but I was almost convinced that it wasn't the original engine for the car.
Okay. Well, they look very similar.
They look similar, but it doesn't have to be the same, you know.
Right. How long did you work with the GTO? Was it in your custody, let us say?
Well, it wasn't only the GTO. I had 40 other cars. I had plenty cars.
But the GTO specifically, you were already working for Ralph Lauren when the car came to you?
Well, the car was already inside, yes.
It was. All right. And, well, when you mentioned the other cars, you want to tell me a little bit about them?
Well, it was a lot of cars that Where you talk, for example, the 1929 Bentley, the Le Mans winner. I enjoyed that car tremendously. I really enjoyed that car, driving it also. That was a thrill to drive the car.
Was it difficult to drive?
No, you have to, well, any of those old cars, remember, the pedals are reversed. It means you have the clutch on the left side, accelerator on the middle, and the far right is the gas, there's the brake pedal. So always remember, because the accelerator is in the middle, and if you step on that, that's the gas pedal, and on the right you have the brakes. So you have to get used to, once you get used to cars of that era, they always had pedals like that, so it was easy, you know.
One day in Los Angeles, I was driving along Mulholland, and coming the other way, I saw a rather extraordinary shape that I thought I recognized, but I thought it couldn't be on the street. It turned out to be Jay Leno in his Bugatti Atlantique Type 57. And I know that there is one in the Ralph Lauren collection. What would you want to tell me about that car?
I didn't have the car in Montauk. The car was in closed storage in Boston.
And of the cars you had in Montauk, which were your favorites to drive?
Well, the Alfa 8C2300. I enjoyed the car tremendously.
You fixed the carburetor on that at one point.
Well, I had to do the carburetor because the car wasn't idling right, and when it started, it was skipping a little. So I did electrical check, means points, spark plugs, and I had to take the ignition switch out. The ignition switch, which is also the headlight switch. So it was some bad connections there. So I took upon doing a solder to every wires at the end of the wires where the brads were shredded a little bit. I set everything back in place, took the carburetor, rebuilt the carburetor, installed it back on, and then the car ran very well.
How often did you drive the cars?
Oh, I drove the car many times on the windy roads. I enjoyed it. And one day I remember, because it was a super summer day, nice, very warm day, and I drove the car around. I'm driving around the Magansett in the windy roads, and all of a sudden the clouds started to come in, and a big rainstorm came up. Big rainstorm. So who cares? Driving a car like that, a 1931 car, which runs like a gym, you just drive it. I felt like in a cloud. I drove in a rainstorm, soaking wet, and some of the Americans were passing me, giving me the finger, telling me, this man is crazy. Look at this guy, he's going crazy. He has no roof, no wipers, no windshield, and he's driving. I was in a cloud, who cares? That was the best.